Welcome to Motor Skill Application Specialist. This video is part of Observing Motion, and I'm going to be taking you through the HMAC of a reach. A reach is one of the 5 skills that we talk about in Motor Skill Application Specialist, and I'm going to be using the HMAC, the Holistic Movement Assessment Chart. And I think we're on about HMAC 9 or 10 at the moment. The HMAC is really a spreadsheet that is designed to help you really get underneath and understand your anatomy so that you can be faster and better at predicting and seeing movement to help your clients improve their skill and their performance. It's one of the skills that sets faster trainers above any other trainer in the industry, so buckle in. This one is going to give you the tools to see a reach. So we're going to start off with our right hand reaching forward and left. Then what we're going to do together is to have a look at which bones move in which order, what joints move in which order, what are the important parts that we see and notice, and what are the key muscles required in these movements. First of all, I notice that I'm taking my hand down and forward and to the left. So everything is moving forward, down and left, apart from when we get to the hip, that's moving back, down and left. So before we go any further and start filling in our deck chair HMAC, I want us to go through and see what we see moving first. So let me just press play again here. It's the same movement coming in. So that hand is taking that movement. So the first thing that we see is the right shoulder. Come back to that full body view in a moment. So that humerus is going forward and it's going down, it's going left and it's going posterior, and there's a right tilt and a left rotation. So what does that mean that the right shoulder is feeling? So as that arm comes down, we're getting flexion because that gap's getting bigger at the shoulder in that sagittal plane. We're getting abduction as that arm's going across the front of the body. And if you just look at the thumb there, we're getting internal rotation. Now what's the second part of this movement that you see? So I think that it's the torso there. So with that torso, we've got the spine, and again, it's going forward, it's going down, and it's going left, anterior, and we've got a right tilt, and then a left rotation, because that gap on that right hand side of the body is getting closer as that hand drops down. So that's giving it that right tilt and then that left rotation. And then from here we come to that left shoulder. So I think that's our third joint we start to look at, and you can see there that the hand is going behind the body. So that humerus is going back and it's going up and it's going left, anterior, right tilt and right rotation. So I think that we're getting extending in that sagittal plane. We're getting abduction as that gap's opening out, and we're getting internal rotation. I think I might change my mind there. I think we might be getting adduction in the back there. We're getting extending. Let's just have a look at when that comes back through. Yeah, I think that's adducting there. Let me know what you think on there. And then from here, I think we go to the left hip. So what's happening at the left hip? What can you see here? What's happening at that pelvis? Is it going forward or is it going back? And is it going up or is it going down? And is it going left or is it going right? So I think that's going back, down, left. And I think that pelvis is going anterior. And it's right tilting, because you've got that drop there. And we've got a left rotation being driven by that arm. So we know that that hip is feeling flexing, adducting, and internally rotating, which is a good one if you want to get your glutes. Then let's go from here to that right hip. So we know what's happening on the left side there. So the pelvis is still going back, down, left, anterior. It's still right tilting and it's still left rotating. So what does that mean that that right hip is feeling? Well, in that sagittal plane, because we're dropping in height, we're getting that flexion. And we're getting abduction. That gap is actually getting wider in that frontal plane between the legs. Remembering that we're looking in the frontal plane at the actual joint of the hip there. And then what's happening in that transverse plane? Is that internal or is that external as that arm comes around? So we're actually getting that external rotation because the gap is getting bigger. So we'd be getting those adductors firing up. In fact, if the hips move, the adductors like to get involved. They love a bit of movement over those hips. So the next one that we're going to look at is the knee. So what's happening at the knee here on that? First of all, let's go to that left knee. So on that left knee, we've got our femur is going back, it's going left, it's going posterior, and I think that's a left rotation, and tib fib is going forward, left, rotating, left rotating. So that means that at that knee we're feeling flexing in the sagittal plane and adducting, because it's just going over there. You can see on the hub that it gets closer to that one. So that's adducting, and then we're getting internal rotation. And I think we are getting internal rotation there. I had a moment where I thought, is that external rotation? But because the foot is still collapsing, then we are getting that internal rotation, just because of the speed in which that tib fib is internally rotating and that foot's collapsing. But we'll get to that in a moment. So then we go up to our right knee. So our right femur is going back and it's going left, and it's posterior. We've got that left rotation, and the tib fib is going forward, left, anterior, and left rotation. So in that right knee, we're feeling flexion, adduction, and flexion, abduction, because you can see there the gap is getting wider on the inside of that knee, and external rotation. So as that hand comes across, you've got an Elvis Presley knee. I'm quite good at the knee valgus. And then I think we go on to number 5, our ankle. So our left ankle here. You might not be able to really see there, but as we look at that left ankle, let's just press play again here. What can you see at that foot? Is it coming to the inside or is it going to the outside? That's going to help out. So you can just see how that tib fib's coming out, and we're getting that calcaneus is left tilting and left rotating. So you're just seeing that foot coming up off as though it's going to get out. So that would be plantar flexing, inverting, and adducting, because we know that if we're plantar flexing at the ankle, then it's a coupled movement, so we need to get inverting and adducting at the same time. So then we'll move on to the right foot and think about, is that a into the floor foot or is it a whoop foot? So you can see that that's going, so that's our accepting the floor foot. So that calcaneus is left tilting and left rotating. And we've got dorsiflexing. So dorsiflexion, eversion, and adduction. So now we come to the left foot. So what's happening at that midfoot? Well, the important thing is that it's still left tilting and it's still left rotating. We know that that's plantar flexing, but we want to be finding out whether it's abducting or adducting or inverting or everting. So if we know that at the ankle it's inverting and it's adducting, then that means that if that foot's on the floor, it's going to be everting in that frontal plane, because the windmill mechanics is going to change that frontal plane into that transverse plane. So that means that we're going to be getting the everting, and it's everting, not inverting, because the speed in which the tib fib is traveling in, the bones are all going in the same direction, but the floor has stopped the foot traveling, the front of the foot traveling as fast in the same direction as the tib fib. So basically the tib fib overtakes. So where at the ankle you were feeling inverting, it means that at the midfoot you feel the opposite and you feel everting. Then the transverse plane, which is what would normally be the frontal plane, is the same. So that's adducting. And that brings us to our last and final joint, the right midfoot. So here once again, in that forefoot, we've still got a left tilt and a left rotation. And in that ankle, we were feeling dorsiflexion, eversion and abduction. So in this forefoot, then we know that we're feeling that dorsiflexion, but in that frontal plane, or should I say in that frontal plane that's turned into transverse plane through the windmill mechanics, we'll actually be feeling inverting. And also we'll be feeling our abducting. And once again, that's because the bones are all traveling at the same time. But once that foot has collapsed and that tib fib speeds up, it means that we get that opposite feeling in that midfoot. So now what we need to do is we need to go and have a look at the muscles that are going to be reacting with that movement, and then we need to write this down. So in that shoulder, when we see that left shoulder move, what are the muscles that are lengthening across that joint? So as that right shoulder comes across there, that's our posterior delts, our teres minor and our lats. See what you think there. And then with that left shoulder, as that arm goes back, that's going to be anterior delts and pecs, because I'm getting that extension and I'm getting that adduction and I'm getting that internal rotation there as well. So it's still a bit of pec, would be more if it was flexion, abduction, external rotation. Then we go into our torso. So really that's all of the core muscles, everything's working there. As we look into that left hip, so what muscles are going to be here? So because of that drop in height, we've got that internal rotation. So we're hitting that glute. We'll be getting a little bit of glute med with that adducting, although we could get more if we took the arm over the head and across the side out of number 5 in our hub. Then let's go up to our left knee. So it's really the quads that are stopping that movement, and that's the same at that right knee there. And then we go to our left ankle. So I would say anterior tibularis here. And then on that right ankle, soleus. And that's because that crosses underneath the calcaneus. Then on that left foot, we've got the perineals, and same again on that right foot. So now all we need to do is to grab our deck chair form and we need to fill it in. Okay, so I think I said that, yep, the shoulder was 1, the torso was 2, and then kind of at the same time there we get the shoulder and the hip, so that's 3, knees 4, we've got the ankle 5, and midfoot 6. So I want you to think about those key bone movements that you saw there, and we're going to write them in here first of all. So we had, let me change my colour, let me go with the blue. Okay, so at the shoulder, I think we had the humerus was going back, up, left, anterior, so I remember that as it's a forward roll over your head, right tilt, like a right cartwheel, and then a right rotation. And then our right shoulder, again, humerus, and that's going forward, down, left, and that's posterior, and so right tilt and left rotation. Then slightly done that in the wrong order there, but you know what I mean. So we had the torso, so that was our, where was that torso going? So our spine was going forward, it's going down, it's going left, anterior, right tilt, left rotation. And then we come up to our hip. So left hip, dropping in height, so flexing. So our pelvis is going back, down, left, anterior, right, tilt, and left, rotate. And then we've got our pelvis is doing exactly the same there. And then we go to our knee. We've got the femur, and that's back, left, posterior, left rotation, and that's the tibia, tib fib is going forward, left, anterior, and left rotation. Hopefully you can understand my scribbles. And then we've got the same, we've got the femur is going back, left, posterior, left rotation, and then the tib fib's going forward, left, anterior, and left rotation. And then we come into our ankle, and our ankle, we've got what we're looking at. We want to make sure that we can see that it's a whoop foot. Okay, so we've got left tilt, left rotation. And our right ankle, we've got the calcaneus, left tilt, left rotation, because of that arm going around. And then in our forefoot there, so we've got forefoot, left tilt, left rotate, and we got the same there as well. So the only one there that I think was the shoulder. I actually think that I'm getting adducting because of as that humerus goes back and it goes left anterior, it does go towards that midline a little bit more on there. So I'm just thinking, is that going to be... Nope, sticking with abduction there because it's crossing that midline, so that gap's opening up. So there we go. And that's the whole essence of doing this HMAC, is it makes us debate different areas. So I'm looking forward to you coming back to me with any areas that you think, not sure I saw that, Jo. So that's all good. Okay, so let's have a look at what those joints are feeling. And I'm going to change my colour of pen. And let's go for the red. So here in the shoulder, first of all, I'm seeing, I need a darker colour for than that. Is that better? I did a different pen, bear with me. There we go. So flexing, so flexion, abduction, and internal rotation. And then in that spine, we got to see flexing, right lateral flexing, and left rotation. So we saw how that shoulder was getting closer to that hip on that right side, so that right lateral flexion, and then we're still rotating around to that left side. Then at the same time, we kind of see that left shoulder. So then we get to that left shoulder, and that's where we get extension, extending, abducting, definitely, and internal rotation. That's what that's feeling. And then going to that left hip, it's dropping in height, so it's flexing, and it's adducting on that left and internally rotating. Right hip, again dropping in height, so flexing. And we're getting abducting because that gap's getting wider in that frontal plane at that hip. So between the legs there, that's the gap is opening, and we're getting external rotation. In that transverse plane. So then we move on to our left knee. So again, we're dropping in height, so that's flexing. It's harder to feel this at the knee, but we are adducting. And if you look at that left knee, it goes across to that left, which means the outside of that knee is getting closer. And we are getting internal rotation. Because as that foot stops, the femur is still coming in at pace, and so we get that internal rotation, that feeling at the knee. Now let's go to the right knee. Again, dropping in height, so flexing, and then on that frontal plane, it looks like a bit of a knee valgus. It looks like a bit of an Elvis Presley, so that's abduction as that gets wider on the inside of that knee. And then we've got external rotation. Then we come to the left ankle. So it's more of a whoop. So with it being a whoop, that means it's plantar flexing. And if you've got plantar flexing, it means it has to be inverting if the foot's on the floor. And that means that you're going to have to get adducting. On our right ankle, that's a foot. So that's dorsi flexing, everting, and abducting. Just remembering that the frontal plane, because of the windmill mechanics, that gets changed into that transverse plane. Then when we get to the midfoot or that forefoot, then we know that it's either plantar flexing or dorsiflexion. So with that left foot, we're really looking to see whether it's getting closer or whether we're getting everting or not. So we're getting, it's everting because it's going to be the opposite to the ankle there, and we're getting adduction. And then on that right foot, see what you think that is there. So on that right foot, yes, it's dorsiflecting, and then it's going to be inverting because that's the opposite to the ankle. And we can kind of see how that foot widens at the side there on that gap. So that's abducting. So now what I want you to do is to think about the muscles that are going to be required. And we'll go into energy escape later on. So if we start off down here, I should at least get another colour, shouldn't I, Joe? Okay, so let's go for a yellow, isn't too dull. A black here. Okay, so we've got posterior, delt, teres and lats. Feel free to add any extras. Okay, so then I think we go to the torso, which is all the core. Shoulder, that's going to be anterior this time, anterior delts. Bit of pecs. We go to those hips, it's definitely glutes. Maybe a little bit of glute med. We've got the adductors. They're always getting involved if the hips are moving. We've got the quads. Quads again. And so we go into the ankle, so that's anterior tibularis. And soleus. Could have gastroc in there, but the soleus there crosses underneath that calcaneus. Perineals. Now, I apologise for my scribbly writing, but what I want you to do is to have a little check yourself and think about whether you can see these movements, whether you can see these muscles reacting. The reason this is so important is that an EMG is really unreliable. It's really difficult to predict what muscle someone is using just by looking at them. We don't know what sequence of muscle fibers they're going to choose in order to complete a skill or a movement puzzle. But what we do know is where we see the bones moving in space. And knowing how the bones are moving, will help us see what the joint's feeling. And if we can see what the joint is feeling, then we can accurately predict which muscle is reacting, because we know which muscle crosses that joint and how it's getting excited in those 3 planes. I would love to hear what you got from this video in the comment section below. And if you think that I've missed anything, or you think that I've done something that you weren't expecting, then I would love to have a discussion about this. For more videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on Instagram on Joanne Groves, and the O is a 0.